Hey Charlie, time to wake up. How are we doing? Good stuff. Hello everyone. We're a little bit later than usual. I'm trying to get these vlogs every Sunday, and part of my New Year's resolution is to make that happen every Sunday. It's been, I think, 4 weeks since I last posted a video, and certainly a lot's happened in that time. An awful lot, actually, which had prevented me from posting up further vlogs, but also it's a tough time of year, you know. It's a tough time of year. I'm not drinking as well, so my creative juices aren't flowing as such. Doing that whole dry January thing, so we're nearly at the end of that. We'll be celebrating the next time I see you guys, for sure, with a pint of Guinness and perhaps a small whiskey chaser. But back to business, and the business being that shortly into the new year, we have a tecma macerator toilet on board, and now it's working properly. It's a fabulous bit of kit, but there's a few things that have come to light that the previous owners perhaps weren't too confident, or maybe a little negligent with their maintenance. And certainly we're here for the next 5 years, so I wanted to make sure that everything was good. And I'd had an issue with the toilet a week or two previous to New Year, and I'd figured I'd fixed it, but I didn't really go into it too much depth. And every couple of days you'd have a little leak coming from the toilet, and you think, well, you know, why is that happening? And you pull the toilet forward and there's a whole bunch of wires, and just a nightmare, absolute nightmare. Never dealt with anything like that before. So I decided to bite the bullet and actually cancelled work for the next day, and decided to make that my thing, to master the toilet and find out exactly why it wasn't working. So I took the toilet literally out off the boat onto the bank there, and like I said, it's a macerator toilet, so it has like a big chopping device, which is obviously electrically operated, and it takes care of all your unpleasant toilet waste, including the toilet paper, and it turns it into a slush, basically, for want of another word, and sends it down a pipe into your waste tank, and then from your waste tank it gets pumped out, and you never see it again, obviously. But that wasn't happening. What was happening was the macerator part was struggling to clear the waste, and the reason for that being, upon further inspection, and if you have a look online, you can see that it comes down to one thing and one thing only, and it's lime scale. The waste pipe at the back of the tecma toilet was a diameter of about 2 inches, 50 millimeter, and when you looked at it, took it apart and looked at the whole thing there, you realized that the boat's 20 years old, and actually the lime scale was probably as old as the boat, and it basically decreased the 2-inch diameter of the pipe down to about 1/4 of an inch. And so any waste that was going down that pipe was really struggling to get to the tank, and you were getting back pressure building up, and that's what was causing the leak. So it wasn't a particularly unpleasant job, but it was a really tricky job, because the waste pipe is 20 foot long. It runs under the side of the bathroom sink, then it goes alongside the radiator in the bathroom, then it goes under the bath, and then it goes under the double bed in the room next door, and then up into the tank. I mean, it's just a ball ache of a job. There's no six ways about it, and clearly that's why it hadn't been dealt with before now. But as I said, we're here for 5 years, so I like to get these things working right, and with limited knowledge, but with a fair amount of common sense, I like to think, I've managed to take the pipe out. This was, again, obviously into the first part of the new year, so a lot of your average builders, merchants, plumbers, merchants were just coming back to work, and as is always the case, whenever I want anything from any of these people, they never have it in stock, or they've never heard of it, or they just look at me like like I've got horns growing out of my head or something. I don't know what it is. Simple bit of flexible hose pipe. Nah, mate, sorry, we don't stock that. Never seen anything like it before. Try, this place here. Go there. Nah, mate, don't know what you're talking about. Never seen anything like it before. Tried it. And you just get the runaround. I think I tried about 4 or 5 places. And in the end, I thought, there's actually nothing wrong with the pipe. It's caked with limescale, so let's deal with that. We're not going to get another pipe today. Need to get the toilet working today. And that's what happened. So without going on too much further about the toilet, we got it fixed. And it's like the Rolls Royce of toilets now. You just touch that button to activate the macerator, the flush function, if you like, and boom, your waste is gone. It's absolutely fabulous. So that really was an uplifting moment. An uplifting moment. I suppose the modern equivalent is like having a plumber come around your house and fix these things for you. But, I didn't get fleeced. I fixed it myself. I think the cost was £1.75 for a piece of joining pipe. And that was that. But the problem was fixing the toilet distracted me from checking the fuel level. Now, we've been on the boat for about 3 weeks, 2-3 weeks. Yeah, just over 2 weeks. And I'd always meant to check the fuel level. I didn't pay too much attention because one of the notes that the guy left behind, the guy who we bought the boat from, the couple we bought the boat from, one of the notes that they left behind was make sure the fuel tank is top 3/4 full at least, if not full at all times. It prevents diesel bug, blah, 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 blah. And I thought, fine. This guy was a straight-laced guy, king of the river, had been doing this for 8 years. I didn't really think I needed to check the fuel level, but of course I should have done. And the reality was, I couldn't. I didn't. There was a tool that I didn't have to check to take the screw off to have a look inside the tank. And fixing the toilet distracted me from actually getting around to check the fuel level. So guess what happened next? Ran out of fuel. And oh boy, is that a pain in the ass. If you thought the toilet was a pain to deal with, running out of fuel is like, it's the worst thing in the world. It's probably the worst thing apart from having a big hole in your boat, and water coming in through the bottom, Popeye style. There isn't anything worse that can happen to you, as far as I'm concerned, on a liverboard in a remote location, running out of fuel. Completely sucks. And after 2 mechanics came to look at it, I resigned myself again to taking another day off work and solving the problem. I had to, because the marina that I rang to come out and have a look never bothered returning my call. I know the guy was busy that day, in his defense, but I never even got a call. So I had to take it upon myself. And it was a good thing that it happened, because when I realised we'd run out of fuel, and I realised that there was an issue with running out of fuel, I discovered that we had 2 core plugs on the engine block that were weeping. So for those that don't know, core plugs are they're like a weak point in your engine block. So if your engine doesn't have the correct level of antifreeze in, and you get sub-zero temperatures, obviously the water inside the engine will freeze. When water freezes, it expands and it pushes out the core plugs, rather than causing massive damage to your cylinder block, costly damage as well. So these core plugs were weeping, and I thought, oh, that's going to need some attention as well. But right now I need to get this engine running. And I did get it running. I got the engine running, as did everyone else. But under acceleration, just couldn't get it to run. And to all intents and purposes, it was still sucking in air. Now, bearing in mind, I've spent the best part of a week trying to get this resolved, coming in from work and then getting straight onto the boat. It was a really anxious time in my life. My partner was quite upset as well, because it makes quite an awful noise when the boat comes to a juddering halt there. You run out of fuel and it's awful. You think the whole thing's about to fall out the bottom of the boat. And it's just basically air in the engine. So I had to trace the whole thing right back to the fuel lines, to the tank. and used a special vacuum pump device to suck the air out of the fuel lines. You've got the world's tiniest fuel lines, just like brake fluid pipes, old school copper brake fluid pipes. These are your fuel lines. You've got a fuel line coming into the engine and a fuel return line going back to the tank at the rear of the boat. So worked out which was the inlet, put the suction pump on that, and basically it seemed like hours. Ended up pumping away, pumping away, pumping away. Must have took about 20 litres of fuel in effect in total to be completely air free. And when we hooked the fuel supply back up again, the fuel was flowing. There was no air coming in, and we managed to bleed the whole engine through up to the top of the injectors. Job done. And she's running now. She's ticking over beautiful. It's a real joy, the mechanical diesel engine, when it's working. And of course now I'm the master of it. There isn't any issues at all whatsoever that I can't deal with on that engine. I mean, I replaced the fuel filter as standard, just in case we sucked up. Well, we did. We sucked up some muck from the bottom of the fuel tank there. That's another job to be done, perhaps when the weather is nicer, to clean out the fuel tank. But she's up and running now. It took a week. In the end, it took a solid day to get my head around this. And you can look up YouTube videos and everything else and so on. That's great. But there's never anything specific to your needs. So I had to take it upon myself just to run through the whole thing. And we got it done. So another job done off the list. Very, very pleased about that. And actually, I'm going to do a tutorial. Try and get that done next week. On how to bleed the diesel engine on this boat. That may be of use to other people. Certainly, I wish I'd had something like that to revert to when I was in trouble there. And of course, one thing leads to another again. So we had the issue with the toilet, which distracted me from checking the fuel level. Ran out of fuel, which is quite amazing. The guy obviously just ran the fuel low before we bought the boat. You know, it's not really a cool thing to do, because I ended up putting 160 litres of fuel back in there just to make sure that everything was cool before we started bleeding and everything else. So we did that. We had, obviously, while I was playing around with the fuel and the engine and everything else, I must have, without realising, knocked the galley supply off, the power to the galley supply off. Now, I didn't think about that at the time. What is that? What does it mean? I didn't know what it meant. Everything was working fine. Until the following day, the fridge wasn't working. I'm like, fuck me, what is it next? You know, every day I'm waking up and something's going wrong here. And it really was pretty dark times, I've got to tell you. Really was dark times. The fridge, I couldn't deal with the fridge. It was so cold outside. The issue wasn't really a major concern. We got the engine running. The engine was running sweet. The fridge, I thought, well, maybe the fridge is duff. I didn't have a meter to test the voltage coming into the fridge, so that had to be put on the back burner for a day or two. I got a voltage test meter and put it on, and realised that there was no current coming in. So you end up tracing the wires back to a fuse board is what you're looking for. No such thing as a conventional fuse board on here. You've got a control panel with all these switches on, and on that control panel is the world's tiniest fuse. And the fuse was fine. And it wasn't until my sharp-eyed partner, that's not easy to say, sharp-eyed partner Michelle discovered the switch was switched off. And I'm saying, well, it can't be that. What does that mean? Galley supply. What does that mean? Everything else is working. Switched it on, of course, and the fridge came straight back to life. So that's 1-0 to Michelle, I have to say. She saved the day in that case. So we've got the fridge up and running now. Happy days. Just this weekend gone, we had some friends come over. So I had my friend Big Red come over, his lovely wife Laura, their 3 children, and obviously Charlie and myself on the boat, and my 2 boys. So we had 9 people, including the dog. Dog's a person, really, isn't it? If you love dogs, you love people. Charlie boy, definitely part of the family. He seems to be very, very tired tonight. I've just got in from a walk, so maybe that's what's done him in. So that was good. Went for a little trip out. Second trip out on the boat down to the bridges to get some more water. It went really, really well. Second time out in the boat and smashed it. Absolutely smashed it. It was later on in the afternoon on a Sunday, and there were quite a few people on the riverbank there just watching us like they'd never ever seen someone in a big long boat before. It was one of those things you think, oh dear, I wasn't expecting a big crowd, but we have to pull up alongside them, so had to do our best job there, and pulled up alongside like we've been doing it all our lives. It's really quite straightforward. Navigating a boat is really quite straightforward. Pulled up alongside, got the motor, kept the motor running, just to charge the batteries while we were doing that, and got the water supply hooked up. Takes about 20 minutes to fill up with water, and in that time, people are just coming up to you and talking to you about the boat, and do you live in that boat, and blah blah blah, and what's it like, and it just, you have to account for that. That was another 20 minutes at least. It was starting to get cold, and the dog was wanting to go for a walk, blah blah blah. So back onto the boat and back up to the mooring point where my pal Big Red actually floated her. What do you do with the boat? Drive it? I don't know. What do you do with the boat? Sent it back up the river, up to our mooring, and happy days. Job done. So all in all, it's gone really well. It's gone really well. I'm really struggling for motivation to do other stuff other than be on the boat. That's how much I'm enjoying this. I'll mention it every time we speak. I'll tell you the truth. I'll tell you the good times. I'll tell you the bad times. I'm happy to say that now we've got over those issues with primarily with running out of fuel, and the toilet, which is going to be like a once in a 10 or 20 year thing. That's not going to be a problem ever again. So far, we don't have any other issues. We don't have any other issues at all whatsoever, and we're just enjoying it. I'm enjoying it an awful lot. I'm self-employed, and I have a lot of work coming in, and I have a couple of 3 businesses, and I have some very good people behind me which can take over the reins there. If I don't fancy coming into work, I just pass the reins on to those guys, and they do a great job. Big shout out again to Big Red for doing that, and it's given me time to enjoy and relax. And honestly, I can say that despite the weather outside being cold and bitter, it's very, very, very windy out there. Inside here, about 32 degrees, and I couldn't be any happier. Like I said, I'm going to keep saying this to you every time. I couldn't be any happier. If you're thinking about doing this, just do it, man. You're not going to regret it. You really are not going to regret this at all whatsoever. Thanks very much for watching. I've waffled on a bit. I appreciate that. It's 3 times as long as usual, but I did have some catching up to do. We're going to do a little live action on navigating the boat. Would have done that today, but for the fact that it was so windy, so it's not a good idea to take the boat out when it's windy. So we'll get that done next week, and in the meantime, I will post up a little video clip of the last time I took the boat to get water. Just shows the outside of the boat, so look out for that coming up. And I'll try and do a little tutorial as well on how to bleed the diesel engine, because I think that's really important. It's one of those things that it's a skill you need to learn. You can't be reliant upon anyone else. If you're going to do this, you need to do it, and there's no 6 ways about it. The satisfaction that you receive from making it happen it's incredible. It's incredible, and it sets you up. It really does set you up. We're here for 5 years, like I say, so it's important that we get to know how to do these things. Anyways, I'm starting to waffle on again. I'm sure you've all got better things to do than listen to me. But for now, thanks very much for watching, and stay tuned for next week. We will be back next week. We'll be back next Sunday. I'll have my boys with me as well next Sunday, so you might say hello to them. They might say hello to you, although they're young teenagers, it's hard to get them to say anything. But we shall see. I'll be in touch. Thanks very much once again, guys. All the best for now.